how do we break the cycle and finally get ahead? So this person writes, my husband and I have been behind financially pretty much our entire marriage. Every time it feels like we're getting ahead, something knocks us back down. We're in our late 20s with a hefty car payment, credit card debt, and student loans. I'm a stay-at-home mom with our second child due in a few months. My husband makes good money, but our spending habits are completely out of control. Eating out is a huge weakness of ours. We desperately want to move into a house and put the bad habits behind us. We're considering debt consolidation, but we're obviously not the most educated when it comes to our finances. What can we do to break the constant cycle of playing catch up and finally clean this up?
It's funny because you've said this before in other episodes, but like the way they worded their question, like it's like they know what they need to do, right? Like they need to get control of the spending, right? Like, okay, the good thing is they know what the issue is. Like eating out is a huge weakness. And I'd imagine eating out is also paired with just other unnecessary spending. So it's like, okay, that's issue number one. And then issue number two, probably the more pressing, is like, you guys have a ton of debt that you're dealing with.
Yep.
Like if he makes good money, right? Where's it all going? Well, eating out and then servicing your debt, like that. And that's a separate question from like, how do you break that cycle? But like, you at least know what the issue is in front of you. And like, they kind of answered like, what are the next things I have to actually tackle?
Yeah. And it's like, this question is also just like, we've been doing the same thing over and over again. How do we stop doing this? It's like, okay, well, you have to stop doing the same thing over and over again. You have to make some type of change. Like I just said, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because if eating out is a huge weakness of yours and that's what you really enjoy, I mean, and you have all this debt, you're going to have to change something up there. Like you're probably not going to be able to continue the same lifestyle that you have, you know? So, but again, like we talked about, it's all the psychology around it. It really comes down to people are very bad with change. We like our comfortable lives that we live, and doing something to make a big difference in our life is going to be hard. And it's going to be hard to follow through with, right? To get everybody on the same page in the family. But yeah, I mean, you have to be willing to change something, and maybe just start small. Maybe just like, hey, instead of 4 nights eating out this week, we're going to cut back to 2, right? Like just start somewhere. I don't think like cold turkey ever goes well, because then you just like, you go cold turkey and then you're just like back to what you were doing, because it's way too hard to do that. But I don't know, start small is what my first thought is here. And also you got to just go for it and get a little uncomfortable, because that's the only way you're going to fix this, you know?
Yeah. And if you go cold turkey and that fails, which a lot of the times it does, you probably are going to feel a whole lot more guilty on top of that. Cause you're like, oh, like, I suck. I'm a piece of shit. Like I'm back to where I was before. Yeah. But like, no, like exactly like what you said, like it's not like the whole journey in front of you. It's literally like, what is the one single step that I can take today? And like, it always goes, for me, it always goes back to like, can you just get 1% better every single day? Right? Like, can you just make one better decision today? And then tomorrow, and then before you know it, that compounds. You do that for a month. Awesome. I'm in a completely different area. You do that for a year and your whole life looks different. Yep. But I think a lot of times, and again, like I feel like the talk about your finances correlates so much with your fitness. Like oftentimes doing what you need to do to improve your life or improve your financial situation, like it can be really hard if you're just trying to do it for yourself, right? A lot of times these big life changes that you have to make, like they're a lot easier if you're saying, well, you know what, like I want to change for this other person. And in particular, like these two people have kids, right? Like I want to be better for my kids. I want to be better so that when they grow up, they don't have to grow up like living this life of stress of we're always strapped for cash and like, oh, hey, you can't really go take on that extracurricular because we just don't have the money for it. Or mom and dad are always fighting over the finances or whatever it is, right? Like I think a lot of times people can get really hung up on changing just for the sake of changing. But if you can attach that to, well, I want to make this situation better, not just for myself, but for this other person. And in particular, when it's for like kids, I think that can be such a huge catalyst to say, okay, now is the time. Like if I can't do it for myself, like I can at least try to do this for them.
Yeah. And literally change your situation so that your kids don't end up there. And so that brings me to a question. You know, they say, well, I have 2 things here. Like they say, should we, do debt consolidation? We don't really know what we're doing here. So how do people, when someone's in this situation, I think 50% of America at least is in this situation, how do they understand money? How do they do better with their money? How do they figure this out? Like that's the biggest question, I think, is, they know they're in a bad situation, but how do they change this? How can they understand money and do better?
I feel like this might come off as harsh, but like I feel like there's almost no excuse to be like, there's almost no reason why you should use the excuse, well, I just don't know how to do it. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know how to make a budget, or I just don't know like where I should start with my finances. Like, okay, if you use ChatGPT even, like, and that's a free resource, like it's going to give you 50 different things that you can start doing today. Right. And I get it. Right. Like, if you compare two people, one person, like their parents educated them on how they should be handling money, and the other person, they didn't have someone to educate them on that. Right. Like they're going to be miles apart from where they start off in life, like especially early in their 20s. I totally get that. What I'm saying is, once you recognize that this is an issue, then it no longer is acceptable to say, well, I just don't know how. You know the issue. Type that issue into it online, into something, right? Like, there's so many free resources out there that if you, it's hard when you don't recognize the issue, but once you do, like now it's on you, right? Like, okay, you didn't know it was an issue. Life just sucked. Okay. That's more excusable. But once you understand, okay, I know there's an issue. And more than that, I know what the issues are. We have debt. We eat out constantly. Like, there's probably a bunch of other BS spending going on. Now it really is on you, right? It's almost excusable when you are ignorant because you just don't know anything about anything. But when you know more about it and you can understand where it is, it's hard to feel as much compassion for it, because it's like, there's so many ways you can just figure out what's one thing I can be doing better, you know? And I don't mean that to be like, to mean to other people or whatever. It's just like, you have so many resources, like in today's world, to just figure anything out. Like, YouTube has like millions of videos get uploaded every single day, you know, a fraction of those are on finances, right? Like one just like this, right? Like, there's always going to be some place that you can learn how to do this stuff, even if it's just like a starting point.
Yeah. I mean, literally, like this, we have a podcast about money and we're just one of like hundreds of them, you know what I mean? And it's free, you know, like to listen and to read books and things like that. My whole debt-free journey started because I asked Google a question, like, should I buy a house without much savings, you know? And that took me down a rabbit hole of learning. I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't, I didn't have to pay if anybody to teach me this stuff. I just like read about it, you know what I mean? And then it was like, okay, if I want to change, I'm going to have to put, you know, the time and the effort into this to actually make a difference, because what I'm doing right now is not working. Right. I also think, something that comes up a lot, like in this situation, like, okay, we have a lot of debt and stuff, and like, we need to change, but we just haven't. They use like we don't know how, not excuse, but like, it's a situation, you know, whatever. They use that. And then they also, I know a lot of people just want to kind of blame on the economy, which sure, the economy isn't the best, you know what I mean? There's the inflation, whatever. But I also feel like that's a lot of like excuses as well, because you can't say it's on the economy and then say you're eating out and it's a huge that's just a huge weakness of yours. Those don't correlate. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be doing that. Right. So I think that there's just some accountability that you need to take too. Like, okay, we definitely have messed this up, and now it's up to us to figure this out and, you know, and fix it. But something they wrote here, which we also see all the time, we're considering debt consolidation. It's the typical story, you know, got all this debt. Let's do debt consolidation. Let's fix it. Well, the problem with that is, you think you've really done something when you've consolidated your debt, because now you have one payment and you're just like, oh, you just feel so good. You just feel like I have done something here with my debt, when really all you did was like move it over, you know what I mean, to like one account. And so I think that's the biggest thing too. And I don't blame them for not knowing. I think, you know, I don't know. I don't blame them for that, but it has to be known that like, there's no behavior change there. There's no actions that you're changing in your daily. Exactly. There's no actions that you're changing in your daily life that's going to make a difference in how you're spending currently day to day. Consolidating your debt is just moving it over. And then what happens is there's no behavior change there. You're doing the same exact things that you've been doing. You don't learn anything from that. You haven't went through anything hard to do that. So then you get another credit card, and then the debt starts rolling in again. And then you're like, I'm so confused why I'm in debt again, you know? And then you're like, what about the zeros transfer card? Should I just do that? And then like, I'll just pay that off eventually. This is what happens to people. We see it time and time again. It's what is that phrase? Like old as time, story as old as time, or whatever that is. Like literally, like I feel like because again, there's no change there. So I don't know. Debt consolidation can be helpful, but without proper, you know, action on your end, you're going to end up in the same situation that you're in already. So now to bring this whole question together, how do people break this cycle? Like, I think obviously it's learning a little bit more, taking like small steps to start, but like you have to make a change. You know what I mean? You cannot continue to just do this and actually commit to it. So I think that there's like a few, I don't know what else you want to add there, but like obviously like learning something and actually starting to change what you're doing your day to day to clean it up from what you were doing before, and then commit to it. And give yourself a few years and hopefully you're out of this situation, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like, I think step one, like you got to be aware of what's going on, right? If you can bring awareness to your finances, clarity, it's most of the times it's going to be glaringly obvious. Like, where is the issue popping up, right? Like is it the car payment? Is it because your housing's too expensive? Is it because your largest expense category is you eating out or buying clothes or whatever it is, right? Like most of the time, if you take the time to just sit down and look at all the numbers, like let me just go through a month's full worth of statements, it's going to be pretty obvious like what the issue is. And then, like you had said earlier, like, okay, instead of eating out 4 nights, can I just eat out 2 nights, right? Like it doesn't have to be these massive identity changes overnight, right? It's just one little thing. What little thing can I practice today that's going to put me into a better position tomorrow, or going to bring me less guilt or less stress or whatever it is. And I think a huge thing too, for people who are in this cycle is like, how many roadblocks can you set up for yourself to prevent what's going wrong, right? Yeah. Like if you know what's going wrong and you're constantly struggling with it, okay, can I set up a bunch of roadblocks so that every time I go to make this bad decision, there's so many points along the way where I can change course, right? Because if it's just one quick decision before you make the same mistake again, it's going to be so easy to make that. But if you can say, okay, well, I got to use this specific card, and that card is only at home and it's in my drawer. And so like, I got to be home, and then I got to go get that card, and then it's not saved on my phone. So I have to type in the numbers, right? Like all these little roadblocks to be like, okay, is this the decision I want to continue making, or do I want to try something different today? Like to me, that's what I found to be a huge difference, is like all the roadblocks, like all the points where you can say, I want to be a different person today. Like that's what can really make a huge difference. Yeah.
And I also think in this situation, they said, we desperately want to move into a house and put the bad habits behind us. Okay, set a goal for yourself. You guys need to dream bigger, because living with these debt payments and eating out is that really what you want for your life? You know, do you want to move into a house? Then stop doing all those crazy things and save up and get a house. Like that should be the ultimate goal there, and like what you're working towards. Like, do you find what you're doing right now is to be like worthwhile, or do you actually want to get to the bigger goal? Like, I think we need to start dreaming bigger, and like we need to see something at the end there, because when we're just seeing the day to the day and Chick-fil-A and Wendy's, like, you know, it's hard to see those bigger goals out there. But if you say, hey, I really want a house where me and my family can live, then it starts to make those decisions of like, no, we're going to eat at home tonight a little bit easier. That's the thing. I just don't think when people are in this situation, they don't really dream, because they feel so behind that there's no point to even dreaming, right? But you got to start somewhere, and you have to be able to, you know, find something to move yourself forward. And I think goals, bigger goals, you know, more worthwhile goals than just eating out every day is something that's going to be able to help them, you know? The information, opinions, and recommendations provided on this podcast are for entertainment purposes only and do not constitute professional financial advice. Any financial decisions you make based on the content of this podcast are your responsibility. We strongly recommend consulting with a licensed financial advisor or other qualified professional before making any significant financial decisions. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that we are not liable for any financial outcomes.